Hey guys, it is me, Known Wells, creator and host of You, Me, Empathy. Today, on episode 17, I sit down with one of my dearest friends, Mindy Holahan Peters, where we explore the idea of mental health as a reflection of others. And what I mean by that, and we explore this in the episode, is how those in our lives impact our own mental health. Mindy had a father who went through gender reassignment surgery. He's transgender, and a brother who is autistic. And growing up in that environment, she took a lot on herself as a caretaker, even with an amazing mom. You know, she's just the type of person who takes stuff on her own and feels like, she needs to be a caretaker in those environments. So we talk about that idea. I think it's something that we can all relate to. Absolutely. So very excited to share this episode with you, episode 17. And thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Check out the show. If you haven't subscribed, go to iTunes, subscribe. If you haven't left us a review, please do that. It helps out the show. Also have a Patreon page where you can get cool goodies and whatnots. Go do that. Love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Bye.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Welcome to episode 17 of You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our neuroses, our mental illnesses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic. And to, hopefully, share that dialogue with others to inspire conversation and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being human. You, Me, Empathy is a safe place, a conversation between friends, a place to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, in episode 17, I am so happy to embark on another empathy adventure on the topic of mental health as a reflection of others with proud Minnesotan, band geek, cat adorer, and proud member of the Fanny Packs Forever fan club, Mindy Holahan Peters. Hello, Mindy.
Yay! That was an excellent summary of me. It's true. All of it is very, very true. I am very Minnesotan, as our coworkers love to have me speak in my Minnesotan accent. And yes, cats. There's a cat next to me right now.
Well, thanks for being here, buddy.
I'm so excited to be here. I am such a fan of this show, and I am such a fan of you and your lovely wife, and this is fantastic.
Good. Well, before we get into the topic, which is mental health as a reflection of others, or in other words, how sort of our mental health is reflected in the people in our lives and how that affects us. And we'll get into sort of the many variations of what that means. But before we do that, let's do a little check-in as we usually do. How are you doing this week?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. Like overall, life is excellent. So Nona and I work together, and I had one stressful day this week where things just weren't going my way, but we got sorted it out. And Nona always listens to me when I'm having those days. Which is very nice and I very much appreciate. But yeah, overall, like life is good. It's sunny outside, even though, it's Minnesota and what is it? It's above zero today. It's 8 degrees, so that's exciting. But we've got some sunshine. I've got a kitty cat next to me. Yeah, life overall is very good.
Well, good. Yeah, yeah, so the listeners, we, Mindy and I, as she mentioned, we work together. So we see a lot of each other, and our work, specifically, we work together, but we also work together, meaning we're like teammates, and we work on a lot of projects together specifically. And Mindy has, over the years, become one of my best buds. We met on Twitter many ages ago and have been sort of buddies ever since. And yeah, it's kind of great because I was on a podcast, and Known just reached out to me after that podcast and was like, "Hey, you were funny," or whatever. And I like, what's the phrase? Like, I dug the cut of his jib, like he just he was very entertaining on Twitter, and so we were Twitter friends, and then eventually talked to each other at some point, and then I was in California and we got together, and we like video chatted a bunch before that, but we got to meet each other in person, and yeah, we've just sort of one of those really cool internet age friendships, and it is a very valuable friendship in my life. It is mine as well, and we also love fanny packs.
We do. So there is a band called Cuckoo Kangaroo that is based in Minnesota, but they tour not even just nationally, man. They tour internationally, and they've got a tour of England coming up this spring. So if you live in England, go see Cuckoo Kangaroo. They play children's music. They write children's music, and they perform it at like elementary schools and things like that. And they do 21 plus bar shows, and they are amazing. They are just the best because it is a bar packed full of like happy, sweaty adults singing about pizza and singing about cats and singing about fanny packs. And I want you to know that you look good when you wear a fanny pack.
Darn right. Yeah.
Darn right. So Nona and I have very much adopted the fanny pack. I have a nice gold one to fit in with Cuckoo Kangaroo so that I can wear them to shows. Yeah. Nona has a very nice pink one. Pink, purple? Is it purple or pink?
It's purple.
Purple, yeah.
It's purple, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to share these photos of us in fanny packs when I release this episode.
Oh, yes, please. But so when Known said, when Known asked me if I would like to be on the show, sort of what would I like to talk about and that sort of thing, the thing that to me was very interesting and mental health is a thing that I think about a lot, just in my goal of sort of keeping myself healthy and being very aware of the people around me and sort of their individual struggles and how I can be supportive of them. And it has been very interesting. So I'm in my late 30s, and I've always been very aware of concepts of like depression and anxiety and things like that. And, as a kid, there were times when, I was sort of a secretly anxious little kid. But for me, it came I was around people who had their own mental health struggles. And it took a while for me to really accept the fact that I had them as well. And not maybe to the sort of degree of severity of the people in my family around me, maybe, but they were there too. And that just because sort of my own personal struggles weren't as intense didn't make them any less valid or less important to pay attention to. And so I thought that would be sort of an interesting conversation that we could have, is sort of if you are sort of a support person, how do you pay attention to your own mental health as well?
Yeah, that's it's a really important topic, because I think we as empathetic humans want to support each other as we want to put our whole selves into the support of others emotionally, and oftentimes that can, if we're not creating the right sort of self-care and boundaries for ourselves, that can lead to some dangerous areas, I think, like it certainly has for me. But it's an important topic, because we all, you are a caring, sort of wholehearted person, Mindy, and I know I am, and I want to always help people, but it's important to reflect on our own mental health as well. So let's get into you, Mindy. Let's get into that story. I want to, I've known you for a long time, but we've never had conversations around this necessarily, and so I'm sort of geeked to learn more about your story.
Yeah.
You mentioned being a little anxious as a child. Walk me through that. Describe that for me. What were you anxious about? Like what? Paint a picture for me.
Sure. Well, so my sort of background is very interesting, in that there just were a lot of things going on. In that, my older brother has autism, and as he became a teenager, his Tourette syndrome got very intense for his teenage years. And so what that looks like for him is he's not very verbal. He speaks now as an adult, and we started when he was a teenager, started using facilitated communication, which means that we hold a letter board and he spells out, and most of the things that he wants to say, he will spell out on this board. He can talk to us with sort of simple requests. He can tell us what he would like to eat. He can tell us, if he needs the bathroom, he can tell us that he doesn't want to do something, things like that. But most of his communication is spelled out. As a child, and when we were really little, he was the sort of quiet. My mom always called him the quiet child, and I was the super, super bubbly. I was a compensation. So he's 2.5 years older than me. And when he was a little boy, they were trying very hard to teach him how to talk. And, just as I was sort of hitting about, 6 months to a year old, it was really when it was becoming evident that there was something else going on with my brother. And they were trying so very hard to teach him to talk that they didn't have to teach me to talk. I just picked up all of the overflow, and I was speaking by a year old. By 18 months old, I was speaking in sentences, and I just started talking and never stopped. So I
can attest to that.
Yeah, right. It's true. No one will say, ask me hey, can we talk about this for 5 minutes? And 20 minutes later, I'm, giving him the history of cheese or something like that. So I was a very bubbly child. I talked a lot, and my brother was very quiet, and he would chant. He had these little chants that he would say, but that was about the sort of extent of it. And we were a good little pair. I was always I was looking out for my brother. Taking care of is maybe not the right word. I was always looking out for him. And I was always telling adults what they needed to do to take care of him if they weren't my mom. If we were being babysat by like aunts and uncles or something like that. I was sort of bossy about my brother's care because I was his little protector.
Wait,
Also, oh yeah, go ahead.
real quick, at what age were you feeling like you were a protector? And how did that just come about naturally? Like the sort of the dynamic in the household being like, okay, we have someone with special needs in the house, and we're forming a unit to protect him, to care for him. And like, did that come about naturally? Did you have a, conversation with your mother about that? Like, how did that come about?
Completely natural. Yeah. There was no conversation of like, you need to take care of your brother. My mom never had to say that. And I don't really think she ever would have said that. Our house was a very fun household. It was me and my brother and my mom, and we just had a great time. My mom is in education. She was a teacher for a long time. She's in administration now. She gets children and she loves children. And our house was just sort of fun, all the time. We had a great time, and it just was very natural in my personality that I would want to look out for my brother, and I felt very protective of him just because, I would see how hard my mom was working to make sure that he was comfortable. And that to me was just sort of what you did, is you worked really hard to make sure that she worked really hard to make sure that my brother was comfortable, but then she also worked very hard to make sure that there was special Mindy time too, so that life wasn't all about my brother and not about me. It was very balanced. I got special time with mom. And it wasn't like it was a very orderly, like, Tuesday night is Mindy night or anything like that. It was just a thing that my mom really paid attention to. And there were moments of tension when I was, like a teenager or something, where she could tell that like I was feeling stressed out and we needed some Mindy time. Like there's this one moment in my high school years that is still something we find very hilarious, where I just sort of had a growth spurt, and very suddenly, and like all of a sudden my pants just were too short. And I remember sitting in ninth grade science and not being able to concentrate on anything the teacher was saying because I was just so focused on how short my pants were. And so mom and I set aside, okay, we're going to go shopping on this night. We're going to get you new clothes and everything's going to be fine. And we started to drive. We live out in the country, and it's about a 25-minute drive to the nearest mall. And we started our drive, and my brother was at home with his PCA. Since his sort of teenage years, he's had an aide that will he picks him up from work. He would pick him up from school, and then they'd spend from like 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock together. So he just has like a guy to hang out with and do guy stuff with, and then that is very helpful. So then, my mom can finish her work day and things like that. So anyway, Tom was home with his aide, and we started to drive, and we got like halfway there, and the car started to make this horrible, horrible noise. And I just burst into tears because I just needed to go shopping so badly. Like, I just needed time with my mom at the mall. Yeah. I needed new pants. We went back home. The aide looked at the car and he's like, you know what? I think it's fine. It's just a belt that needs replacing. You can still go to the mall. We went to the mall, and it was one of the greatest nights of my childhood, I think, because it was just me and my mom, hanging around the mall. We found a bunch of clothes. I stopped feeling awkward, because I had pants that were long enough. It was wonderful. And my mom always worked so hard to make sure that there was just a really nice balance of time with my brother, time with me. My mom worked very hard.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, well, and so, but that is part of it. That is part of, for me, I took on some responsibility as a child there in helping to care for my brother and things like that. But then there was another component in sort of my sort of developing mental health that was interesting, in that my parents divorced when I was a very little child, a baby. I don't have any memory of, my parents together. And the reason they divorced is that my dad wanted is the wrong word. My dad had a gender confirmation surgery, so I only ever knew my dad as a woman. And it was interesting because it was the 80s. It was a small town. And she moved to the Twin Cities because it was a small town, and her family was very uncomfortable with the idea that their son was, in fact, a girl. And, living her life in the cities, just because we lived in a small town. It was, people didn't know what, transgender was in the 80s. It wasn't a word that people even knew, much less a concept that was well understood.
Right.
And so, it was a thing that we talked about in our household, but we didn't talk about outside of our household. The thing that is so great about my childhood is that my parents got along really well. By the time I was old enough to really be aware of things, they, were very kind to each other, very friendly to each other. And then Shannon, who, it's always so funny. When I was a kid, we didn't have a word for her. She was my parent, but she was just Shannon.
Right.
So she died when I was 20. And so it's hard for me to talk about it because she is my dad. But it is hard for people when you talk about your dad and then your dad is a woman. So we never kind of worked out the terminology. She was just Shannon, right?
Yeah.
And so, Shannon then had a life partner, Bridget, who is my stepmother. They weren't legally allowed to be married because gay marriage wasn't legal in Minnesota before she died, but they were married for all purposes, and I consider her my stepmom. And she was just a wonderful part of my childhood. So my memories, I always remember having essentially three mothers. I had my mom, and then I had Shannon and Bridget, and we would spend a lot of time together every other weekend. My brother and I would go, and as we got older, we would, stay the whole weekend. And then when my mom would come to pick us up, we would all eat dinner together as a family. Then they had cable, so we'd all sit around and watch a movie together.
Wow.
And we had these wonderful, lovely family times. There was this time I remember in my childhood where Shannon loved the orchestra, which I very much do too. And she loved the orchestra, and she had these tickets, and usually she would go with Bridget's mom to the orchestra because the orchestra just wasn't for her, right? And for some reason, her mom couldn't go, and Shannon asked my mom, "Hey, do you want to go to the orchestra?" And so they went to the orchestra together, and we stayed with Bridget, and it was just sort of funny. And they came home, and we all joked about if Newt Gingrich could see our family, because there was all that talk about the nuclear family, in the sort of mid 90s. And we were look at this wonderful family. We are an unusual family, but we are a very functional family,
Yeah, it sounds the picture you're painting it's quite beautiful. I'm really in awe of how sort of conducive and how open and healthy it seems.
It really was. It was this wonderful, I think, very, very, very healthy family. But then there was the flip side of I couldn't tell anybody about it because I lived in a small town, and my mom was always far more sort of, it was uncomfortable in that, people would ask her, questions about why did you get divorced or that sort of thing. And she would just sort of, you give those non-answers of sort of what happened or do the kids see their dad or that sort of thing. And we got very good as a family of giving sort of non-answers because we lived in this small town with our grandparents who are Shannon's parents. They lived just a few minutes away from us and were very involved in their lives. I really consider my grandpa, who's my paternal grandpa, he was very much the father figure in my life. He was, you know, he was the guy that took me to father-daughter Girl Scout activities. And, you know, he was very present in our lives in terms of, he was the guy who would come over and fix things in the house, and he would take my brother and I through long walks for the woods, and was just very much a wonderful, wonderful part of my life. And my grandma was a wonderful part of my life, but they were very uncomfortable with the gender transition thing. They and for a very long time, their relationship with Shannon was very poor. And it took them until I was sort of late teen years to really be able to spend time together and to be able to, have sort of family meals together and to be able to be together without it turning into, sadness on somebody's part or something like that. So as a result of that, we didn't tell people about our family, in that, like, I didn't tell my friends, about Shannon and Bridget. I didn't even really, when you're a kid and sometimes kids ask each other the most like insensitive questions, right? Because they just don't know better.
Yeah, just very direct.
Yeah. And they'll, kids would ask me questions about my dad. Where was my dad? Why didn't I see my dad? What happened to my dad? Things like that. And I would be very evasive about answering those kinds of questions. And the thing about that is, it's a very bad idea to ask children to keep secrets. When you ask a kid to keep a secret, it sort of becomes a very big thing in sort of their internal life, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember being a high schooler, and I have never felt so much fear as in the moment that we all walked into the gymnasium and sat down and for a school assembly, and it was a hypnotist. And the program started, and have you ever seen a hypnotist work?
Like on videos I have, but never in person, I don't think.
I don't know how it works. I'm a somewhat I was a very gullible child, and I bought into it. I don't know how it works or whatever, but they started the program and were pulling kids up, hypnotizing them, and then asking them questions. And I was absolutely terrified that I was going to get called up and hypnotized, and then they would start asking me questions, and I would suddenly spill all the family secrets, which was very unrealistic. The questions they were asking were very simple, and I'm sure they have to be for the whole sort of shtick to work.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting through that whole assembly in just sort of this terror that I am going to reveal these family secrets,
That's understandable. What regarding these secrets, and are you, it sounds like this was sort of like a family decision that, you just sort of speak around the situation for was it fear? Was it not wanting to deal with the scrutiny? Did you have conversations with your mom about what to say? What was going on there?
Not really what to say. My mom just would explain to me your aunts and uncles aren't comfortable with their kids knowing about this, So my cousins, this was a thing that they were sat down and told when they were in high school or whatever, and until then they weren't allowed to know, which is ludicrous.
Yes.
It's a really ridiculous thing, but it was just a thing that people didn't understand. This is where the world to me is such an amazing the amount of progress we've made in my lifetime is so joyful and so wonderful, because when I was a kid, people didn't understand autism, right? And I would tell people, they'd say, like, what's with your brother? And I'd be like, oh, my brother is autistic. And they'd say, you mean artistic? Like, they didn't know what the word autism was. Now, like, every newspaper you read, there's going to be an article somewhere in that newspaper, like, every day about autism. Autism is a thing that is talked about constantly, which is amazing to me. And, like, people know what transgender means. They understand the concept. There are, actresses and actors that are, like, famous, beautiful, wonderful people that they know and love. And, like, there are role models, in the world. And all of this, to me, feels like it has changed in less than the last decade. Like, in, like, maybe the last 5 years, the world has, like, opened up, and it is so amazing. But when I was a child, it was a thing that people didn't understand, right? And so, it was just a thing that you take your guidance from other people, and you just learn that, like, oh, we steer the conversation in a different direction.
Yeah.
Oh, we just steered the conversation towards something else. And I got very good at just, moving the conversation on until I hit my senior year. And my very best friend said to me, she just pinned me down once in we were eating lunch, and she just said to me, you are lying to me. You are a very bad liar, and you are lying to me about what happened to your dad. And I need you to tell me right now what happened to your dad, because you are lying to me.
Oh, goodness.
And she's right. I'm a terrible liar. I'm just not very good at it. And so I told her, and then she gave me a big hug and said, okay. And then suddenly there was somebody in my world who knew about my family. And
how did that feel?
It was, like, terrifying and wonderful, because if there's anyone I could trust, it was Gwen. And yeah, it was terrifying and sort of wonderful to have somebody. So then the fear was, like, I went home and I, like, told my mom that I told her, and she was like, that's totally fine. You can tell whoever you want. In terms of, like, this is your life too. Mm-hmm. We haven't, she made it clear that while we're attempting to sort of protect the people who want this idea protected, like, this is your life, and if you want your friends to know this, you are allowed to do that.
Right.
And that was very wonderful. And it was a very slow process for me in terms of, like, going to college and getting comfortable with the idea of talking about this with friends. And I remember feeling very, very afraid. And I got a small slice of what it feels like to come out of the closet. It's not nearly the same degree, but I had some insight into that. Yeah. Which makes me feel very empathetic and understanding toward why it can be challenging for people, especially if you feel like you're not in a safe environment, or if you're not sure if you're in a safe environment, if it's an okay thing to talk about. And so it was sort of this interesting process, which was compounded by the fact that my second year of college, Shannon was dying. She had cancer, and she was sick for most of basically the second semester of college, and a couple of weeks, 2 weeks before school started for my junior year of college, she died of cancer. And 3 days before she died of cancer, my grandparents, who were just huge figures in my life, her parents, they died in a car accident on their way home from visiting her.
Oh my gosh.
And I was ready for Shannon to die in, sort of as prepared as you can be, when I had gotten myself sort of mentally ready for the idea of it, but yeah. I was not at all ready for my grandparents to die, because like when she died, in some ways it was also like,
It's okay.
it was like, the death of the idea of ever having a dad.
Yeah.
But I had my grandpa,
Yeah.
who was that figure for me. And, you think like, he was still going to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and then he wasn't. And so it was a very challenging time, it was very challenging just because it was so much all at once. And then 3 weeks after that, my other grandma died. So it was just like, in the span of a month, like, oh.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's sounds awful, and I'm very deeply sorry.
It was, but it was one of those things where then you decide, like, what am I gonna do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just went back to school because I could stay at home and feel sad. My mom and I talked it over even when I was struggling a little bit in an accounting class, and that was just because it was accounting. It was, but I was struggling just a little bit, and I explained to my teacher what had happened, and he was like, "Why are you still in school?" And I told my mom that he said that, and she's like, "Well, I mean, what are you gonna do? Sit at home and feel sad?" And that was how I felt too. Like, I could sit at home and feel sad, or I could keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept going, and that worked. It worked. My grades never really my grades were never as good after that point. Like, I wasn't as focused in school, but I was very focused in building relationships and that sort of thing. And it all kind of worked until I hit about 27 years old. And when I was, 25, when I was 25, I moved out to Philadelphia from Minnesota. And I moved out there. My boyfriend had moved out a year before, and I was sort of stuck career-wise at home. And so I decided to move out to Philadelphia, and then I only knew my boyfriend, and I was a lot more isolated. I found a job relatively quickly and fell in there, but as I sort of went on in Philadelphia, after about a year and a half there, I had a lot of sort of misplaced emotions. I had a lot of road rage, which I am a generally very happy, positive person, and I would just get furious when I was driving. And driving out there is somewhat more aggressive than in Minnesota, but I would get irrationally angry, and I would scream, and I would swear at people, and I would drive aggressively, and I just wasn't myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also listen to the radio, and commercials would make me cry, like absolutely sob. Little clips, little like tiny PSAs on public radio would reduce me to absolute, sobbing tears. And I started to realize, like, these emotions are not right. Like, there's something bigger going on here, and I went to the doctor for a checkup, and he asked me about basically, it was your standard checkup, and he got to the checklist items about my mental health, and I started sobbing, and he was like, "Yep, you need a referral."
Mm-hmm.
Because, just a few simple questions were all it took to reduce me to tears. And so I got this referral, and that was when I started seeing a therapist and started the process of talking about, all of the emotions around sort of keeping secrets for other people, as well as some of the emotions around, being the responsible sister, as well as Shannon was a lovely, wonderful person. She was a great source of fun in my life, but she also had her own, sort of very strong mental health challenges, and she could get very stuck. She could, her emotions could take up all of the space a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
If she was feeling sad or if she was feeling anxious, nobody else was really allowed to have any other feelings because she was having feelings. And so there was this interesting process of learning how to process all of these emotions that sort of had been building up for 27 years and learning how to deal with those and think about those and be okay with the fact that I could have emotions too. And that just because maybe my brother was having some challenges didn't mean that I wasn't allowed to have some challenges too in the moment. Or just because Shannon was having sadness didn't mean that I was allowed to have sadness too. I remember very much the day that I left for college. Shannon and Bridget picked me up at my mom's house and packed up all of my stuff to take so that they could, basically the way that the scheduling worked out, it was more convenient if they sort of dropped me off for the first day of marching band camp at the University of Minnesota, rather than my mom. And so we all agreed. And, I left home and I was crying and crying, and my mom was crying, which was even more frightening because my mom never cried. We were all having lots of emotions.
Yeah.
And so we drove to the cities. And we stopped for pizza, and they got Shannon's order wrong, and just a little bit wrong, but they got her order wrong, and she sent it back, and it still came back, and it wasn't right, and she just started to cry and cry and cry at the table, and she was having all of these other they were emotions about her kid is going to college and her kid is feeling sad and things like that, but her upsetness took up all of the sort of emotional space, and then I had to stop being sad to then try to calm her down, and when really in that moment it was more appropriate that I was the sad one, so it was a lot of sort of things like that, learning how to be okay with the fact that I was allowed to have emotions and that I could show my emotions to other people. The idea that I would cry in front of other people was a very hard thing for a long time. When I was talking about crying over radio commercials or whatever, those were things I did by myself. I would leave.
Sure.
I would go to the bathroom and cry or things like that. And so it took me a long time to sort of learn the process of, number one, being okay with having emotions. Number two, being okay with having emotions when other people were having emotions. And then sort of learning how to think through my emotions in a healthy way. It was a very interesting process,
It makes...
I feel like I've gotten off track.
No, not at all. I love every bit of this, and I can just listen for hours to you talk about this. But I just wanted to say that I hear you, and I wholly understand how you got to a place where you were caring for others in place of yourself, and you, on one hand, you grew up in this wonderful, progressive, environment that is so I'm just in awe of. And, your mother, who I've never met in person, although I've danced with over Skype, just sounds so strong and supportive and loving. But then on the other hand, you have your brother and you have Shannon, who are, you love deeply, but as you point out, have their struggles, and with those struggles come, a I don't know if burden's the right word, but you took on these things yourself, and so those are two big forces in your life.
Yeah.
So it makes sense you came to a place where you were, putting all of yourself into them and forgetting about yourself. Like, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, it was an interesting. Nothing was ever conscious, and I was never told that I had to sort of supplant my own emotions for somebody else's. It was just sort of what happened, and it was just sort of the process of being a caring person and trying to take care of the people in my life who were struggling, in the moments that they were struggling, working really hard to try to make things okay. And in that process of always working so hard to try to make things okay for other people, I learned some unhealthy habits.
Yeah.
The good thing is, I feel like in this process of learning that I started then, so when I turned, I think it was about 27, and I started this talk therapy with this wonderful therapist who just, I had tried therapy very briefly in college. The summer right before Shannon died, my mom and Bridget said, you have to go talk to a therapist. Like, basically they made it, it was not negotiable. I had to go to the school's counseling. And I went, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was in one of the oldest buildings on campus, and I think it was the 3rd floor. And I very clearly remember climbing the stairs to go to that appointment, and there being this big window at the end of the hallway, and thinking, just like, if I ran really fast, I could do like a movie crash through that window and get the hell out of here.
Yep.
But I went, and the therapist, was a good man, but I think he just kind of didn't get it. He just didn't. I came to him with so many unusual sort of situations that he just didn't understand. And he, I remember him he asked me to write a letter to Shannon about all of the things I was angry about missing as a child. And I remember just being like, I'm not going to do that, because it was inappropriate in that moment. I'm not going to express my anger to this person I love who is dying. This is not the moment for that. It was maybe if she was healthy, we could have tried that or something. But I just was I just realized that that's not appropriate right now. I'm not feeling anger right now. I'm feeling sadness. So I just sort of would kind of nod through the sessions and then, forget everything that we talked about, So I tried it first. Yeah. Right. Where you just realize this person isn't getting me.
Yeah.
But then flash forward to when I'm 27, and I found this. I was so frightened to have to go and open up to a person who I thought wasn't going to get it. But the person I found was wonderful, and he got it. He understood all of the things. He understood all of the things, and he could help me talk through, I would essentially just come to him with stories and tell him about things, and then he would help me examine how maybe my response to it. He helped me sort of evaluate the way I responded to life. And that was very helpful, because sometimes I feel like I could get so wrapped up in emotions that I never stopped to ask myself if my emotions were correct. If the way I was interpreting a situation was correct. I would just dive right into trying to fix things without stopping to ask myself, is this a thing that needs to be fixed? Is this a thing that, needs me to do something? Or maybe I just need to stop and be in the moment for a while and think about it without trying to immediately try to solve all the problems. Yes. It was just a really wonderful, wonderful process. I took a lot out of that. And then I had to move back to Minnesota. I wanted to move back to Minnesota so badly, but I had to leave him behind. And that for me was the hardest part about moving away, was leaving this person who had helped me so much. Yeah, that part was really hard. And I haven't tried any kind of talk therapy since, because the process of like finding a person like that again seems so overwhelming.
Yeah. How, I so relate to I think, talk therapy, I don't think is a cure-all for everyone. And I think there are good therapists, there are bad therapists, there are therapists that just don't sync right. It's just, it's one of those things like, medication, where it's a process to figure out like, the right fit. I remember when I was studying abroad in Wales and sort of dealing with my eating disorder and going to a therapist at the University of Swansea in Wales, because I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I brought sort of like you were saying, I brought all this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and this therapist, she had no idea what to do with me. I don't think she had ever heard anyone talk about an eating disorder. At least that was my perception. And so I was just like, all right, this isn't going to work out. Like, after about 10 minutes, I realized that. But talk about like, so hearing you talk, it's making me think about, obviously lessons in self-care, lessons in creating healthy boundaries, lessons in, working on just being in our emotions and having the
Yes.
insight into our own emotions. Like, how are you doing today with those things?
Yeah, well, boundaries is a really great word that I didn't really even understand until maybe, 3.5, 4 years ago. And there was a book that I bought, and it's amazing. And there's a reason it's a classic. So the book is called, I'm looking at my bookshelf, Codependent No More by Melanie Beatty. The last name is Beattie. It's a classic book. Like the version I have is the like 25th anniversary edition, right? It's a classic book written by a Minnesotan woman for Hazelden, which is Hazelden is an alcohol and drug treatment or recovery facility. It's one of the best in the country. And this is a book that she wrote for Hazelden Press about codependency, and it is written for people who are like the spouse in an alcoholic relationship, sorry, that came out wrong, who are the spouse of an alcoholic or something, like, or the parent of an alcoholic or something. And no one close to me is an alcoholic, but the messages in this book fit so clearly. And it was, essentially what this book walks you through is the process of learning to separate your emotional health from another person's, and from learning how to not feel responsible for another person's emotions. And the process of reading this book absolutely changed my life, in that it talks about boundaries over and over. And I started to realize that I was just very poor at setting boundaries in my friendships with people, in my romantic relationships, in relationships that, I wanted to be different than they were. I would use my ability to be empathetic inappropriately,
Yeah.
and I would use that inappropriately. And in reading through this book, it really helped me understand, how I learned to be this way, in the idea of like my brother, I mentioned his Tourette syndrome. So when he was a teenager, his emotions were very volatile, and he could have these big, massive tantrums, where like, he ripped his door frame apart once, in in a fit, and we had to take his door off of his room so that he couldn't slam it over and over and over when he would get mad and things like that. And so I learned how to manage his emotions, right? By being very kind or being very stern, or I would learn how to use my emotions to manipulate his emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and the same with Shannon, when she would be very, very upset, I would learn how to respond with the exact right emotion that would calm her down, right? And so I sort of inadvertently learned how to be a little manipulative with the way that I would approach people. And this book was so helpful in like teaching me how to set boundaries so that I would stop doing that, so that I could have my emotions and I could be comfortable with somebody else having their emotions and be okay with the fact that like I might not like what their emotions are, but they are entitled to them. They are allowed to have them. Their emotional response in this moment is not my problem, and
Right.
it is not a thing for me to fix. They are allowed to be angry, and I am allowed to not like that they are angry. And these two things can exist at the same time, and I don't have to make it better. And that was just absolutely eye-opening. And so for me now, I have learned to be very comfortable with unpleasant emotions, or as comfortable as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, the way in which I feel it is the biggest gift is I can be very comfortable with people who are in grief or sadness. I am okay being around people who are very sad. I understand what grief feels like, and I'm okay sitting with people in that grief. And I know that it can make me feel very sad too. I mean, like I cried in our conversation here. Those feelings still exist, and they're okay,
Absolutely.
But I also too am learning a lot better to just sort of, if somebody near me is angry, to just sort of ride through that and to be okay with the fact that they are angry. It doesn't mean that I made them angry. I am not the cause of that emotion necessarily, so I don't have to fix it. I can just listen to them and ask them questions and be okay with their anger and maybe help them if they want to work through it, or if they just want to be angry, that's okay. They can just be angry because anger has its place.
I'm that's a lesson. I'm so glad you read that book because I mean I think that's a lesson that I think so many of us can learn from, even just in terms of our own self-care. Like a thing I say over and over again on this show is that we can't really truly care for others if we're not like looking out for ourselves, if we don't have like the insight into our own sort of emotions and we're connecting to our emotions. And somewhere along the line, sometimes like things get twisted and we have this perception that, okay, I need to take over. I need to take care of these people. And we forget that we don't have that control, really. Like I remember when I was, I tried to quote unquote mediate my parents' marriage, and I put a lot of like emotional pressure on myself to like, I was basically like telling myself, oh, if their marriage doesn't work out, it's on you. I'm like, these are the lies I was telling myself. Like that's just false, right? And so like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
it's we all can get to a place so easily where, especially people who are caring and they see people struggling. It's I think it's such a natural place to go to want to like put ourselves wholly into them, but it's such a good lesson to remind ourselves that like, look, that's their journey. We can listen, but we also have to take care of ourselves through the process. Because if we don't do that, then throw everything out the window.
What you're making me think of is, it's so silly, but A component of our jobs together is you manage a support inbox, and you're answering customer support questions. And it was something that I did before you took it over. And for me, it was very challenging. It makes me feel very anxious because it's like, here's this email inbox, which email already makes me feel anxious, but here's this email inbox full of people having problems, you know?
Yep.
And one thing that impresses me so much about you is how good you are at managing that and not letting it get to you. It gets to me a little too much. But one of the things that we constantly sort of talk about in the process of this is, you know, sometimes there will be a support ticket from somebody who is just sort of irrationally angry, right? They are just, something isn't working, and they are just so angry. And the thing that we sort of remind ourselves, you and I, like, and when we're discussing these problems, is this: while there's a small part of this problem that is about us, the larger picture, this is not about us. There are other things in this person's life that are not going well, and they've chosen this support ticket as the place for it to vent. Like me with my road rage, that was the place where my anger would seep out. Because if you don't deal with strong emotions, they seep out in other places, right?
Yeah, it's like putting your finger on the little leak, and then elsewhere it pops out, like, you know, on the wall or whatever.
Absolutely. And so what we like remind ourselves is we are going to help them within the proper bounds of the support for this product. And then we will just apologize and, you know, sometimes offer a refund or try to send them in the right direction. But to understand that sometimes that anger just isn't about us. And we're not going to be, no matter how hard we try, we aren't going to be able to fix this problem for this person.
Yeah.
Even if we can fix the software, we can't fix the problem.
Totally. And I think that's a great example of what we're talking about. I think another important component, and I bring it up all the time, is the fact that there is a stigma around emotions, specifically certain emotions, right? So like I always say, like, all emotions are valid. And when I say that, I don't mean that, you know, when I'm feeling angry, I'm sort of validated to, like, take that anger out on another person.
Right.
I don't mean that. What I mean is whatever I'm experiencing is okay. And that, again, that gives us an opportunity to say, hey, okay, what's this about? What's this thing about? You know, and usually it's a very sort of complex thing. And so when I'm like, you know, managing a customer support inbox, for example, or, you know, just people in my life, I'm reminding myself that, like you said, whatever they're experiencing, it's valid to them. It's a thing that they're experiencing. I can't take it personal. And also the sort of the stigma of, like, anger or you know, some other quote unquote negative emotions, like destigmatizing those things and having the perspective that all of these things they're okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I think that helps.
And the process of us reminding ourselves that, like, this isn't about us helps us take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, because these things are being thrown at us. And we, you know, sometimes you will send me a message and you'll say, can you look at this ticket? Just tell me I'm not crazy. You know, like, am I understanding this properly? Like, this person is getting angry with me. Can you help me? And that is you saying, I need a little help just to take care of myself here. Me not managing that inbox all of the time is me just trying to sort of take care of myself. Like, you and I think, have very good understandings of emotion and these things, but it doesn't mean it's not hard.
No, absolutely not.
It doesn't mean it's not hard to live in the world.
I think, that's a great point, because I do think we, you know, when, you know, I'm sort of at a place in my life where the last few years I'm more sort of trying to be actively focused on transparency and being vulnerable and opening up and stuff. And like with that comes a certain like this idea that like, oh, you know, like this is the path and that's how it's going to be. And, you know, things are all good, but, I am also human, right? And I have my struggles. And like, I think that's such an important part of all of this. And empathy really is understanding that we're all just trying to figure this thing out.
That's right. And so that is where then having other people does become very important. And the idea that caretakers need people too. Caretakers need care too.
Mm-hmm.
And so having someone that, like with work, it's just so helpful to know that if I am feeling deeply frustrated with something, or if I'm feeling kind of afraid of a task, or, you know, just because I don't understand it and I don't know what I'm going to do next or that sort of thing, I can talk to you and you can talk to me when you have problems. And we do spend a fair amount of time sort of in our work life, just sort of talking through, I guess, our emotions with each other about the things that we're doing. And it's so helpful to have that support. And it's a thing that I'm trying very hard to sort of be more aware of. You know, when I see my mom, my brother still lives at home with my mom. And actually it was very kind of exciting this year. Well, it was last year, I guess, last winter, it's like October or something. I am now co-guardian for my brother, with the idea that then it will make it easier as my mom gets older for me to sort of step in and be able to legally be allowed to sort of take over some decision making and that sort of thing, you know, as my mom needs me to.
Yeah.
But the idea of being really cognizant of, is my mom getting the support that she needs? Just having people to talk things through,
right?
You know, and being more aware now that I'm older of like, oh yeah, mom isn't just there to make everything better, but sometimes mom needs somebody who can listen to her too.
Yeah. And what a journey she's taken.
Oh my goodness. My mom, she's just, she has spent her life in the role of caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very good at it. And I just try to remember to give her opportunities to not always have to be a caretaker 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But my mom is a fun person, and my mom is the reason I am a cheerful, sunny person. My mom is the reason that I think that I look at life with such an optimistic outlook, and the reason that I find most things hilarious. Both my mom and Shannon, they're both hilarious people who found life to be just silly. We have a lot of good silly time, which is why you and I are friends. I mean, you and I are friends because we both love silly.
I mean, life is silly.
It is. And I got silly from my parents, like 100%. And Bridget, my stepmom. So I talked about her earlier, and you know, Shannon died in 2000, but Bridget is as present in my life as ever. And she didn't have to be. She chose to be, you know, a part of our family. And she and my mom hang out, which is so cool.
That's awesome.
Like, that is the part that, and her family, you know, has embraced our sort of funny role in her family. So like her extended family invites my mom to holidays and things like that. It's just, it's like unusual, and this sort of like wonderful, enlightened idea that I think you can never have too many people who love your child, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that they have really taught me that like, it's always better to embrace the people around you. And so Bridget is still just this wonderful part of my life. And she got remarried, and she has a new partner, and her partner has embraced us all and treated us like family too. So I when I'm describing Victoria to people, I'm like, she's kind of my stepmom.
She's step up.
Yeah, exactly. All of these people stepped up in our lives, and it is wonderful. And so my goal is to try to just give back a little bit of what they gave me.
That's so beautiful.
And we mostly
Yeah.
do it through pizza.
That's
My husband
yeah.
makes wonderful, wonderful pizza, and so we make pizza for everybody. Tonight, it's Sunday night, people are coming over for Star Trek and pizza.
Oh, that sounds amazing. How are you doing with your self-care and boundaries and stuff with your husband, with John?
Oh, well, it helps that he is very much, we are very of very similar personalities, sort of more so, I think, than is typical, in that um we both like to spend a lot of time with each other, which is really nice. We both we like to talk through our problems with each other very deeply. Um, but we're also very good at not like if he wants to go hang out with coworkers after work, or go do sort of stuff with guys, or whatever, um that is 100% a cool thing. I will have these moments where I will think the old me maybe would have been a little resentful of him wanting to go and spend time without me. But now, as an adult, now that I'm an adult, right, I recognize that is a super healthy thing. We need our time apart, but we love spending our time together. We, I think, have very good boundaries with each other in terms of understanding what the other person needs. Not be I am totally happy to sit with him if he is upset or if he is sad, and we talk through these things, but I don't have to fix it. I just have to listen. And that is really, I think, the good thing that I've learned is I don't have to fix it. I just have to listen. And by listening, that helps make things better. And
Absolutely.
He is exactly the same way with me. Yeah. So I don't try to control him with my emotions. I just let him be who he is, because he's wonderful.
He is wonderful, and that's so good to hear. I was talking to Tony, who does the Tony Time episodes with me, just yesterday. Tony Time, yes. Yeah. And this was episode 13, I think, and we were talking about how sometimes it's just, when it comes to connecting with one another, and empathy and sort of self-care and sort of mental health and mental wellness, one of the biggest parts of that is just listening, is just saying, I hear you, I know you, I see you, recognizing that person is there, and just listening is a huge, huge part of it.
Yeah. And I guess then the next stage for me in terms of all of this sort of self-care is I am looking to get an official ADHD diagnosis. I am just sort of starting that process, but I've sort of, as I've come to understand the role of emotions and the way I react to things, I started to realize I fit a lot of these symptoms of ADHD. My childhood fits a lot of these symptoms, the way that I acted as a child. Right. And so I will be going through the process of getting that diagnosis. And apparently it is very common that women don't get diagnosed until their late 20s or in their 30s, just because of the way symptoms sort of present in girls and in women, and also because of sort of societal role expectations of girls. Their sort of ADHD tends to present as a lot more overly helpfulness, distractedness because you're trying to help other people, which is absolutely me. So I'm going to be so interested to see sort of, number one, if that is accurate for me, and if so, what are the new skills that I can learn as a result of that, as well as, will medication be an appropriate option? If it is, what will that look like? Those sorts of things are very interesting to me. So that is the next wave in terms of how I learn to care for myself and my emotions and my mental health.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
and I commend you for taking that step because it's hard. It's hard to. Like I was mentioning earlier, like how exhausting it can be to somehow, to go through the process of seeing a therapist or getting on medication or whatever. Like it's a big step.
I've been thinking about this now for over a year and a half. I mean, more than that. Like a year and a half ago, I did sort of start that. I went for my regular checkup and I talked to the physician and asked for a referral, but sort of in true kind of like what would fit with some ADHD fashion, I picked a very inappropriate moment in my life to do that. It was the week before I got married. I just then, when I got the call for the referral, it was right at a moment where my health insurance was also changing. So I just couldn't follow through with the process at that moment, which to me is slightly hilarious, just that I picked such a wrong time to try that, because it does sort of point to my difficulty in sometimes handling the adult things like that, like going to the doctor, making the appointments and things like that. So I just got new health insurance, so we're going to try again. We're going to see how I can do this. Yeah.
Well, good job. I mean, I'm very proud of you for doing that. And I'm actually very curious to hear about that journey and how that goes. And maybe I have you on again and we talk about ADHD. Who knows?
Yeah. I would be 100% up for it.
Awesome.
Oh no,
well,
you're the best.
You're the best. I as I mentioned before, I can listen to you talk for hours, and I do every week.
You sure do.
But I so appreciate you sharing with me, and I'm always here for you, and I hope you know that, and here to listen, and I care about you as a human, and so I appreciate you coming on and sharing with me, and it means a lot.
Oh, I appreciate you, and I care about you, sir. I love the time that we get to spend just talking together and having our dance parties and all of that. It's wonderful.
It is. Well, let's talk empathy heroes.
Yes. I am prepared. I have my empathy hero ready.
Let's hear it.
Can I go? Okay. My empathy hero, I have his Twitter bio pulled up in front of me. My empathy hero is Zach Walls, and the last name is Wahls. And Zach Walls is running for state senate in Iowa. And you might remember him 7 years ago. A video of him went a little bit viral, and it was him talking before the Iowa State Senate House. I'm not sure which. It was him talking about his moms. The Iowa legislature was debating same-sex marriage and whether or not they were going to allow same-sex marriage. And he got up and gave a talk about his life. He was, I think, he was in college at the time. And just about his life growing up with two moms and how their family concerns are the same as every other family's concerns, which is like, what are we going to make for dinner tonight? Like, are you doing well in school? And just that he gave such a passionate speech about how their family is just like any other family. It was beautiful, and it has stuck with me all of these years. And this year he is running for Iowa Senate District 37, and I'm so excited that he has taken this experience of his and that he is wanting to serve in public office. I'm so impressed with him. I love the things that he has to share. He seems like a very open, beautiful, empathetic person. And so he is my empathy hero because he was willing to stand up and share what his life was like. And now he is working really hard to make life good for other people.
That is amazing. And I have goosebumps.
And his Twitter account is at Zach Walls. That's ZachWahls at Zach Walls. So
Great,
follow
yeah.
Zach Walls and support him if you live in Iowa.
Yes, and I'll make sure to link his Twitter profile in the show notes. That's a great empathy hero. I love that so much. We need more people like that in serving our public.
I agree. I totally agree.
Well, my empathy hero this week is my late grandfather on my mother's side, John Brewster Loomis. He died in April. Maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, 8 or 9. I don't remember the year, but it was hard. I didn't see him all the time, but I saw him a few times a year, and he was just such a fun human. He loved to tell stories. He was in the war, and my mom always described him as like sort of, and he was very outdoors. He was a rancher. He drank heavy. He chewed tobacco. He was just sort of like, one of those guys. And he also had just a great sense of humor. He called me Chicken Hawk.
Chicken Hawk.
Because I have these 2 cowlicks and my hair just stuck up and back. So he called me Chicken Hawk. Yep. Isn't that fun?
That's kind of great. I love it so
Yep.
much.
So he's my empathy hero this week because when I was in Wales, studying abroad in Wales in my sophomore year in college, and that was during the darkest period of my life thus far. Mm-hmm. And I was going through my eating disorder and just depression and was I was like 125 pounds at that point. He would send me postcards, like seriously, like every week or so, he'd send me a new postcard, and on the card he'd write like just sort of banal goings on the ranch, like saw some wild turkeys today, and got on the tractor, and love Grandpa and Lindy. And, usually the postcard was like of like naked women, silly, like just like silly, like, quote unquote, dirty grandpa like stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it just like, it warmed my heart. And I swear to you, like it was a huge part of like me staying alive, to be honest. And I wish I could have told him that in person. And I still have all of those postcards, and I'm not sure at what I'm going to do with them, but I want to do something with them. But so he's my empathy hero this week.
Oh, that's delightful. Oh,
yeah.
That's just so sweet. And isn't it such a reminder that something that seems really simple can really matter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because if you think of the act of sending anyone postcard, that seems like such a minor thing. And like, does it really matter if I send this person a postcard? But the aggregate of that is that it kept you going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go Grandpa. Grandpas are the best. My grandpa was amazing. Grandpas are the best.
Yes, they are.
I love grandpas.
Yeah, I have the shirt I often wear to bed is like it's big shirt. It's like entirely too large on me, but it's of my grandpa's face on the front. Okay. On the front, and then it has his name, John Brewster Loomis, and in the back he was a Marine, and so it says Semper Fi on the back. But just a good guy. I liked him a lot.
That name belongs in a novel,
right? Yeah, man. John Brewster Loomis. Yeah. Maybe I'll write him into a story sometime.
There we go. Can we could make him the hero?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Either that or the Yoda Spock figure.
Yeah. Yeah, I was writing a story once. It's like, I call it my in-progress novel, one of them. And I have a character that is sort of like a traveling magician, but he has like a lot of mystery as well about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he could be sort of like a John Brewster Loomis type character.
There you go. Oh, I'd love it. Oh, no, and this was wonderful.
Well, Mindy Pants, do you want to tell the listeners maybe where they can connect with you online or
Sure.
whatever?
You should be warned that I'm sometimes great at following up and sometimes terrible when it comes to things like Twitter. But Twitter is probably the best. Both Twitter and Instagram, I'm Ola Mindy. So that's HOLAMINDY. Like, hi, Mindy. But also my maiden name is Holahan. So Ola Mindy, both Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is going to be very haphazard. What you will get from me. Instagram is going to be cats. I've got 3 cats, and it's pretty much going to be cats or pizza, or snow because I live in Minnesota.
Yeah. Tigger, Spot, and Mew.
That's right. Tigger, Spot, and Mew. Tigger and Spot. I got them when they were about 6 months old, and then Mew is my husband's cat, and she just turned 18 years old.
She's a beautiful cat.
She's a beautiful, grouchy old lady.
Well, Mindy, I appreciate you coming on to You, Me, Empathy.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
Of course. And for you listeners, as always, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You, Me, Empathy.